Hello everybody, my name is Don Arleth and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. We are just 3 days away from the first round of the presidential elections here in Poland. There have been numerous debates and candidates have traveled the country to appeal to voters. Now it's time to focus on the ballot box and which candidate can get out the vote. Now joining me to discuss who has the best chances and what's at stake for Poland and Poles is Anna Wojciuk, Associate Professor at Warsaw University. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, now the latest opinion polls, according to Politico, have narrowed over the past few months, with Mayor of Warsaw, RafaŁ Trzaskowski, supported by the Civic Coalition, coming in at 31% in the lead. Grzegorz Nawrocki, Law and Justice supported candidate, is close behind with 25%, and Sławomir Mencen from Konfederacja is coming in third with 13%. So in terms of the first round, is this election still very much up in the air?
Well, I think that it's quite likely that Trzaskowski will win. The question is how strong will be his lead in the elections, the first round. Usually in Poland before elections, the electorates of two largest parties are consolidating in last 2 weeks. So it's not a big surprise that Nawrocki is gaining at the expense of Mencen, who the candidate from the far-right Konfederacja party, who was getting very good results a month or 2 months ago. Now his support is decreasing, and I think it's also because those stable electorates of the largest parties are consolidating and mobilizing to vote.
Right, and in these elections, as in all elections, it's really about who can get out the vote, who can get their supporters to come to the ballot box and actually vote. What are we expecting in terms of frequency being here in the first round and then potentially the second?
So I think the turnout is something which is the hardest to predict. It's really hard to guess. It seems like it's not going to be as high as in the general elections of 2023. We have some proxies which may or may not be accurate. For example, sometimes we look at the number of Poles who registered to vote abroad, and this group is very large. This time it's around 500,000 people. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. So this could indicate that the turnout will be quite high. However, most experts believe it will not be as high as in 2023. It's very unlikely that it will be that high, which was in 2023 it was
record. Which is record. Yes. Yeah, absolutely, 73%, somewhere around there, as far as I recall. And now, if there may not be a clear winner in the first round, assuming that the top two candidates make it to the second round. So who has more advantage to pick up more votes from the previous existing candidates?
The electorates of the democratic parties and of the far and extreme right are quite evenly split in Poland. It's about half-half. So of course the question is about mobilization and also about the reliability of the electorates of both sides. And it seems that a recent scandal which Karol Nawrocki is facing and which concerns the way he acquired an apartment from an elderly handicapped person really produced a split between law and justice, him and as a law and justice candidate, and the Konfederacja and Sławomir Mencen, the extreme right party. Sławomir Mencen started to very strongly criticize Nawrocki, which is a change in his tactics, because throughout elections they were quite polite one to the other. And this time Mencen started to attack him, and this may make it harder for Nawrocki to get the really large chunk of the electorate of Konfederacja. This electorate 5 years ago was split half-half between then Andrzej Duda, the candidate of Law and Justice, and Rafał Trzaskowski. This time it seems that a larger part will go to Nawrocki because it's an anti-systemic electorate, so it's unlikely to support the incumbent. But also a large part of this electorate can demobilize and not turn out at all. So I think it makes the situation harder for Karol Nawrocki.
Now, for our viewers, just how important is the office of the Polish president? What powers does it have and does it not have?
So basically the executive in Poland is with the government, with the cabinet and with the prime minister. But the president has an important veto power. So without the president, you cannot pass through effectively all the statutes. So the president cannot do much, but can block a lot, and without the ability to have new legislation, of course, the powers of the government are limited. And also, the president has some competencies in foreign policy, in defense policy. He's a chief of Polish army during war, but in times of peace, those competencies are limited and are a little bit like in France. When there is cohabitation, there is this tension between the government and the president. Sometimes even if there is no cohabitation, but there is a president who is ambitious, wants to get a larger influence, there tend to be tensions with the government. But according to our constitution and its interpretation by the constitutional court, the executive power, including in foreign and defense policy, is with the government. So it's primarily veto power.
Right, and blocking legislation.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've seen, since the general elections of 2023, we've seen the coalition that's been in power. Essentially, a lot of their initiatives have been blocked by President Duda.
Yes.
So, in this case, this time around, could a victory of a candidate other than RafaŁ Trzaskowski threaten the ruling coalition, and could it spark potential snap elections?
So I believe that the partners in the current ruling coalitions have very strong incentive to maintain that coalition until 2027. So in my view, it's very unlikely that it would dissolve the majority, the parliamentary majority. However, I think that the perspectives for the current government in this case of losing presidential elections by Trzaskowski would be very, very bad. I mean, because of course all the plans for legislation for especially restoring the rule of law, also about women's rights, so all the promises which were super important during elections of 2023 will not be fulfilled, which will lead to a major disenchantment of the supporters of current coalition. And furthermore, I believe it will give much more hope and optimism to the voters of the right-wing parties. So I think those elections are very important for both sides.
Yeah, definitely a lot at stake. Well, the second round of the Romanian presidential elections are coinciding with our first round of presidential elections this Sunday. Now, the first round at the end of last year in Romania had to be canceled due to potential Russian influence on the campaign of Kălin Georgescu. The Polish Prime Minister of the Polish Minister of Digitization said that Poland also faces risk of Russian influence. Now, how would this happen, and which candidates would Russia support potentially?
So we know in Romania that Russia was trying to, and successfully promoted, an unknown candidate using social media. Of course, countries which try to have such an influence, they don't do many times the same thing. It would be very stupid and ineffective, and of course everyone is learning, so everyone is prepared for that. So in the Polish case, clearly it would not be the idea of promoting. Of course, we have some weird candidates among the 13 who run, but we do not see any major campaigns in social media which would promote them. The demand for what they are proposing is very limited in Poland. But we may imagine other ways of interfering, and a couple of days ago or hours ago, depending who watches how closely the political scene, we learned about what we could call informal support for Rafał Trzaskowski, which is not by his committee and which apparently financed a very massive campaign on Facebook to promote Trzaskowski. His committee claims that this is not something they're orchestrated or were aware of, but this could potentially give arguments for the right to question the elections. Of course, at this point, we know very little about that. We don't know what were the connections between Rafał Trzaskowski and people who produced those videos, which were promoted by, I think, around 500,000 zlotys. This is the sum I read about. I think it's too early to say what's going on, so just I would like to signal that there is such a situation, but for the moment, I don't think I can give any further comment or analysis on that.
Okay, well, we have first round coming up on Sunday, and then we have the second round 2 weeks later, so I guess we'll have to see how this all shakes up. Anna Wojciuk, Associate Professor at University of Warsaw, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this round of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.